All right. So this is a follow-up to the previous video blog, and because I know somebody's probably going to ask, yes, that is a rabbit back there. I have a bunny, and I leave the cage door open when I'm in my room so that she can hop around on that upper deck and get a little bit of exercise and fresh air. But while I'm in there, so I can supervise her and make sure she doesn't jump off. Anyways, this is a follow-up to the previous video blog that I did. I want to first off thank everybody who has shown me their support and reached out to me since the horrible events of late October. Everybody who has called me up, it's to message me, commented on the previous video blog, or messaged me on YouTube. The video blogs are on YouTube, obviously. Commented on my Facebook statuses regarding the incident, or messaged me on Facebook. And everything. And to the people that I met at Jeremiah's memorial, and to Jeremiah's family, who's especially been kind and supportive. You guys are all the best. Thank you very, very, very much. It means so much to me. It truly means a lot to me to know that many people cared and have been so supportive. It's definitely helped. I am doing a lot better than I was when I filmed the last video blog. I haven't had any crying outbursts since I think last was the week after I filmed the video blog. Although I still, from time to time, see things that Jeremiah would have found cool, or that he would have found funny, or that he would have liked to see, or would have liked to have. And it's a bittersweet feeling, to say the least. And there's still many moments where I will get something in the mail, or I'll buy something, or I'll see something, and I'll want to call up Jeremiah, and I'll think about calling him up, and then I'll realize that I can no longer do that. So I still get that every now and then. And you know, it's still kind of hard to believe that he's gone. But surprisingly, I'm managing my grief pretty well. It doesn't even, it's sort of like this peaks and valleys type thing where some days I feel it more than others. There are some days where it feels like nothing even happened. But I suppose that's sort of how these things go. And I did go to the memorial, which was exactly 1 week after everything had gone down. I met some of I reconnected with Jeremiah's sister and mother, whom I had met before. I had also met his father, and his father told me that I was free to have anything in Jeremiah's collection of lighting stuff that I wanted. And although there were some things that Jeremiah had that I was envious of, that he had in his collection, you know. Although to have anything from his collection, and especially to get the stuff that I was envious of previously in this way, would be bittersweet. But honestly, I think Jeremiah would want me to have a good portion of his stuff. Although what I think should be done with the collection is that it should be auctioned off to fellow collectors, and all the proceeds should either go to Jeremiah's family, or it should be donated to the Autism Foundation, because when I was at the memorial, it was suggested on the notifications for the memorial that instead of bringing flowers, to just make donations to the Autism Foundation instead. And I'm all for that. And I know that Jeremiah would want this stuff to go to fellow collectors. And there's a bunch of, especially to the lighting gallery guys that he knew personally, I know he would want them to have some stuff too. So we'll probably at some point sort out the redistribution of all that. But right now, the family's still going through the grieving process. I mean, this is a really heavy thing. And a big chunk of the reason why I wanted to do this follow-up video blog was because there were some things that, well, as you already know, the last video blog that I uploaded, well, actually, I don't know if you know this, but it was a second take, and some stuff that I had meant to say, since it was a second take, I didn't quite say and get the full information out there. Plus, there was also some parts that I might have that I definitely had forgotten, especially going the second time around. And even though this was a second take, I still got a little weepy at the end if you watched it all the way through. And, you know, those who know me know that I'm one of those guys that almost never cries. And, you know, even when I do, I generally don't like to be seen by people. So, but I still decided to leave that one go as is and upload it to the internet. And I did it largely because I wanted to clear my best friend's name, because I had seen a lot of the news articles and news stories and comments that people who never knew him left on them. And some of them really bothered me. And I didn't want people to think that he was some sick, twisted, gun-toting freak or a crazed drug user. And one thing I forgot to mention, since it was the second take, and this video vlog right here is the third take of my follow-up. The first and second ones didn't come out too good, just like the first one of the previous one did not come out too good either, but it was drugs. I forgot to mention that during the second take. And some of the news articles had suspected bath salts or claimed that investigators suspected bath salts. And if you watched the interview with the neighbor that I had linked in the previous one, the neighbor refuted that as complete and utter bullshit, because neither Jeremiah nor his boyfriend were ones to try that sort of stuff. Although both of them did smoke marijuana. And at the end of the day, it's Jason, the boyfriend, was a schizophrenic. He was going off of his meds. And I was in favor of the legalization of marijuana before all this happened. And I still, for the most part, am, mostly. But one thing I have heard about is that there have been some studies linking marijuana to triggering schizophrenia in some people, although I don't hear about those incidents very much. So as far as I know, the odds of something like that happening are remote, but they are there. And I don't know whether Jason was a schizophrenic from day one or if it was triggered by marijuana use. And that scares me a little bit. Although what happens far more often than it triggering schizophrenia in people who previously never had it, as far as I know, and this happens more often, is that schizophrenics smoking marijuana, it can exaggerate the symptoms of their schizophrenia, their disorder, and make it worse. And that's even more scary. I mean, the first guy in I think it was Florida, who ate a homeless man's face and was killed by cops, and people suspected bath salts. The toxicology report later came up, and there was nothing but marijuana, although he was a diagnosed schizophrenic. And with a mental disorder that serious, any mind-altering substance can make it worse, but marijuana had been specifically linked to symptoms getting worse. Yep, there she goes back into the cage. Anyways, getting back to the point. So that does scare me, but still it seems to be, for the most part, a pretty harmless drug. And I don't think people should go to jail for smoking a plant that grows in the dirt, a plant that grows in the ground, or even for growing it. I don't think the penalties should be as stiff as they are. I mean, there was recently a photo circulating on Facebook where it mentioned the two guys who grew pot plants and got 80 years in prison. I said 80, not 80, which is essentially a life sentence. Meanwhile, Jerry Sandusky And most of you already know what he did and who he was. Football coach, Penn State University, pedophile, got only 30 years in prison. And, you know, I think the things that Jerry Sandusky did, or at least was accused of doing, he probably did them. So far, all the evidence points to it. Basically, the things Jerry Sandusky did were far, far, far worse than growing some pot plants. So, but yet his sentence was 50 years shorter. Although Jerry Sandusky's an old guy, so 30 years is essentially a life sentence for him. I mean, he'll be in his 90s if he's still alive by the time he gets out. And that's assuming that he even lives that long. We don't know that he will. But that's another story. You know, basically the only drug I knew about those two doing was marijuana, and I know Jeremiah well enough to know that he would never touch the hard stuff. And he was too informed to use bath salts as far as I knew. So he was not a bath salts user. And I know that he's smart enough that he wouldn't even try it. He definitely stayed away from harder drugs. But I needed to get that out there because a lot of people thought he was a sick and twisted drug user and gun-toting freak. And the guns, by the way, belonged to Jason, the boyfriend. They were antique guns. I had mentioned that in the previous video blog, and I only saw 3 of them. There was a small caliber hunting rifle, a double-barreled shotgun that allegedly did not work, and a Derringer pistol, or a pea shooter, if you will. And I'm thinking it was the small caliber hunting rifle that Jeremiah held to the cop, and I would still think it was a suicide by cop type case, given what we know. And a second interview with the same neighbor that was interviewed, that did the video interview that I linked in the previous video blog, surfaced on the internet. And that one basically shined further detail into just how crazy some of the crazy things Jason, the boyfriend, thought, believed, or some crazy religious beliefs that he'd held before meeting Jeremiah, and those sorts of things. And that it just seems to me like, going off his meds and being on marijuana, Jason really snapped, and Jeremiah got dragged down with the madness, into the madness, and it sadly led to his death. And, you know, it's really sad that this had to happen, and I still sometimes, I mean, people tell me that I should not have all these should have, could have, would have type thoughts, but I can't help but think, because, I mean, this was an entirely preventable scenario, and I still can't help but think that if I had acted on the urge to call him that I had about a week or so before all this had happened, that maybe he would have divulged a little bit more, and maybe he'd still be alive today if he had reached out to someone, or if one of us had reached out to him too. And the weird thing was that when I was at the memorial, another one of Jeremiah's friends said that he also had the urge to call Jeremiah about a week or two before everything happened. It's like synchronicity. And it's like I said, this was a preventable scenario, and you know how you hear about synchronicities in the universe. I think our urges to call him may have been cases of that we just dismissed and we ignored. And, you know, I don't know if I ever knew that Jason, the boyfriend, was a schizophrenic. I mean, I did sort of see that he had a temper sometimes, but that was about it. Although they also it seemed that both of them believed in the theories about Nibiru. If you've heard about Planet X or Nibiru, that was a 2012 doomsday scenario that's already been debugged and has been dismissed as false. And at one point in time, Jeremiah and Jason both believed that the Nibiru theories were real and that the government was covering it up. But they later stopped talking about that, so I think they later stopped believing it. And I'm not going to get too into the other crazy beliefs or superstitions that Jason had held prior to, because I don't want to upset Jeremiah's family or Jason's family should they find this and watch this. But some of it was rather crazy, and it just seems like Jeremiah just got dragged down into the madness, and in the end it led to his death, and that's really depressing. But and that's another reason why I decided to do that. Yep, that looked like the power twist was starting to blink. I have the Durotest power twist tube in that 2-foot fixture over there, and it's starting to blink every now and then, meaning it's probably on its last legs. But that's another story. To get back to the point, a big reason for me to come out and do these video blogs was so that, one, I wanted to clear my best friend's name. I wanted people to know what type of a good, honest, caring, non-judgmental guy he was, and a giving guy, and there's many good things that could be said about him. And I was at his memorial, and it didn't seem like people were mourning that deeply. I didn't see too many people crying or much, but people were more laughing and reminiscing, and I've even been able to, I'm surprised I've been able to manage my own grief as well as I have, but knowing Jeremiah, he was the kind of guy that loved to see the people he cared about happy, and he liked to see people happy in general. So knowing him, he wouldn't want us to be grieving or be sad for too long. So perhaps that would be more the type of thing he would have wanted. And if it can all, the other reason I wanted to do this video blog, if I haven't said it already, the second reason, I wanted to be sure that if getting this out there could prevent this type of thing from happening again to anybody else, it'd be worth it to put this out there. And it's like I said, more and more evidence just points to that Jeremiah could tell that Jason was losing it, because I don't know, from watching the first interview with the neighbor, it led me to that conclusion. And the second one just leads me to believe that, it was sort of going down like this again. And I still think suicide by cop seems to be the most logical explanation if we assume that he was sober. I mean, it's also possible that somebody could have tricked him into taking a drug that he normally would not take. But I don't know. I mean, I have not heard anything about the toxicology reports, and I would like to know more. But, it's like I said, perhaps knowing that he'd have to end his relationship was too painful to bear. And I want to echo the sentiment I expressed in the previous video blog, and that was to, and I plagiarized this from an advertisement that I'd seen a few years ago, but it goes like this: live long enough to see the good, or live long enough to see the better. And, a lot of us are going to lose loved ones. It's inevitable that all of us will lose loved ones. We may see relationships end. We may lose friends. And of course, and relationships, I mean, when you really love someone, you can be blinded to the partner's faults. And you can let it drag on far longer than it should. But you can also, when it ends, it can be absolutely devastating. And, you know, I know that feeling all too well. That's why I had mentioned in the previous video blog something I didn't want to talk about, which was before finding Lighting Gallery in that community, like in 2007, the closure of a relationship where I was really in love with the woman, and I was so upset that I was getting ready. I was ready to kill myself one night, and some power stopped me from doing it. And, you know, I mean, I still occasionally suffer from suicidal urges or thoughts, and there's some other people in my family that get those too, so I think it might be genetic. And they've always been for trivial reasons, for situations that are very minor and temporary, but largely a thinking process that one thought leads to another, which leads to another, and it's like, oh shit. And then at some point it gets to, it's not going to get any better. And that is complete BS, because you don't have a crystal ball, and neither does your mental brain blips, your mental loops telling you these terrible thoughts. So when you get those, my advice is to live long enough to see the good. And if you really need to talk to somebody, find somebody that you trust and care about, who has an open mind and will hear you out without judging you, and see if you can get them to hear you out and give you some advice. Or write in a journal. Can be writing in a journal, an online journal, or something else can be therapeutic as well. And, you know, if it'll prevent something like this from happening again, you know, I will encourage everybody who knows me, or even only knows me by my videos, and hell, if you just don't know me but somehow feel comfortable with me anyways, I'm open to this, and I'm probably going to get flooded with messages and comments for saying this, but if you really need somebody to hear you out, and you feel comfortable with me because you know me, or you're just familiar with my videos, you could seek me out, and I'd be happy to hear you out and offer whatever advice I can, in hopes that it'll prevent another tragedy like this. And as far as the hobby goes, this is something else I forgot to mention in the video, but you know, or I think I just didn't mention it properly in the right words, was that, you know, how I got into this. You know, I've been fixated on these types of stuff, like things that glow, especially things that glow by gas discharge, which includes fluorescent lights, high-intensity discharge lights, which is a family including three major types of lamps, which are the metal halides that you see in stadiums in most places. High-pressure sodium, which is they've been using them a lot in streetlights. They produce an orange color that I find irritating to the eyes, but in some applications it does work, such as if you're using it as a grow light, plants can see the red light, or it might be good for accenting buildings that are orange in color. Or if you want to show off something that's red, orange, or yellow at night. Or my personal favorite of the high-intensity discharge family, mercury vapor, which was either in the clear form. The clear versions glow a blue-green color, which is great for landscape lighting. It makes the greens and all the plants just pop right out. And it's also, trees don't see the light at night, so they can get a decent sleep, because plants go through a sleep cycle as well, in case you didn't know. And they also make coated versions as well, and I see both types used in yard lights, yard blaster lights, or in some floodlights, and in some street lights as well. And even the very last bulb that Jeremiah ever gave me was a mercury vapor bulb, which is this one. It's a Sylvania 100 watt style tone, which glows sort of a pinkish white color, similar to that of a warm white fluorescent. It's an unusual color. Although you usually see the deluxe cool white colored mercury vapor bulbs, they made them in several other colors as well. And a lot of those other colors are harder to find these days. It's usually just the clear ones and the deluxe white ones. And I talked about preheat fluorescents being an especial favorite of mine. Those are the old ones that use starters to preheat the lamp, and usually when you flick the switch, the starter glows for a bit. If you can only see this if the starter has a transparent casing, a translucent casing, or a hole in it. Old starters were just metal with no hole, so you didn't see the glow. And then the tube blinks randomly, or if there's multiple tubes in the fixture, they all blink randomly at different times, which is fun to watch. I always say that those types of fluorescent fixtures have the most personality, which is why I tend to favor them. But yeah, I was fixated in all this stuff since I was a little kid, but I never started collecting or restoring any of that stuff until I discovered a whole online community of people who did that. And then, especially after meeting Jeremiah, he gave me some stuff and helped start off my collection, and he'd often come by and we'd go to Urban Ore together. And after heading up the memorial, after I came back from the memorial, I decided to go to Urban Ore for the first time. I think that was the first time since hearing the news. And I've gone to Urban Ore several times since, grabbed stuff anyway. Because where I was at, like right after I thought about giving up the hobby altogether and getting rid of most of my collection, which I probably would have just either given away or sold to fellow collectors. But I decided I'll keep it up and collect twice as hard. For the both of us, now that Jeremiah's gone, I got to collect twice as hard for both of us. And I decided to continue. It's been a very therapeutic hobby, and I mentioned that, and we both sort of were susceptible to having fixations because Jeremiah had Asperger's syndrome and I have Asperger's syndrome, so we've got, as a result, oftentimes fixations and phobias, and the fixations on things that most people don't really care about is actually kind of cool because it adds an extra degree of fun in life that a lot of people don't get. The phobias, on the other hand, are another story, and I probably had to get over hundreds of phobias in the course of my lifetime. I only got a handful of them left now. But that's a major leap in the right direction. Anyways, despite this, for all the fellow collectors out there, since I've thought about doing this anyway, but I need to thin down my collection as it is anyways. So what I'm gonna do is, if you're on Lighting Gallery and you see something in my collection that you like, you can ask and make a reasonable offer on it and buy it from me. I might be willing to sell it to you. All you got to do is ask, and the worst that can happen is I'll say no. But I'm willing to let people ask anyways for anything, although for the large stuff such as 3 and 4 foot or 3 foot, 4 foot and larger stuff, the only problem is that I have no way of shipping any of that, so that would only make sense if the buyer could arrange for some sort of freight type shipping, or if they lived on the West Coast and was willing to take a road trip down here to pick it up. But I might be willing to let go of some of the larger stuff as well, if of course the price is right. And yeah, I think I've covered just about everything. So again, big thanks to everybody who's lent me their support during this difficult time. It's meant a lot to me, and it really made me feel good to see how many people cared. I will probably I don't think I have anything else to say at this point that won't basically be a repeat of something I already said earlier, so I think I'll probably end the video blog on this note. So thanks again for watching.